Of course, we are watching how North Carolina's elections will play into the balance of power in Washington, D.C. Joining us now with some perspective on all of this, NBC political director Chuck Todd. Mr. Todd, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Happy to be here.
So, the race that's drawing national attention, we've been paying very close attention to it, of course, here in North Carolina. Who's going to replace the retiring Senator Richard Burr in the U.S. Senate? What are you watching for in that race tonight?
Look, it's cliche, but it's turnout, and it's specific turnout. It's turnout in among African Americans, particularly, actually, where I'm looking for it is not in the metro areas. It's turnout in some of the rural majority African American counties, particularly in the southern border. Because when you look at sort of when Democrats find success in North Carolina, and it's always very competitive, but it usually is like Charlie Brown on the football. Republicans seem to always pull it out by a couple of points. The couple of times when Democrats have won over the last 12 years in North Carolina, I'll go 14, excuse me, back to 2008, it's when rural African-American turnout also surged with urban African-American turnout. We saw that in 2008. Barack Obama came close in 2012, helped a Democrat win re-election as governor. Also, 2016, that vote did not show up. 2018, that vote did not show up. 2020, it didn't show up. So here with Sherry Beasley, African-American woman candidate on the ballot, she has spent time there. Does it have an impact? Do we see better than expected turnout there? Because then that would tell me a lot about whether Beasley was able to do her own ground game. You know, she's running on her own. The National Party threw in some money, a decent chunk of change, but not like Pennsylvania, not like Arizona or Georgia. So she really had to do much of this herself. So that would also tell me what kind of operation she had.
Yeah, you said it. We're going to be paying attention county by county, taking a look at those numbers. Ted Budd, of course, the person who she's running against, running for Senate. His seat in the 13th district is up for grabs, and that district has moved from the triad to the triangle. How does that change things, you think?
Well, look, in theory, it should help the Democrats here a little bit. And I say a little bit, you know, just by slight demographic makeup. But this is a fascinating seat in that it does sort of has a bit of a suburban quality to it with a little bit of a rural tint to it on parts of the district. Look, Democrats feel optimistic here. They think they can win this even if they lose the statewide race. They think Bo Hines is somebody they've been able to turn into somebody that is seen as too far out of the mainstream. They're trying to make him sort of a Madison Cawthorn type of figure. We're going to find out if that's a successful tactic, or do the fundamentals and the sort of frustration that maybe some voters have with the economy, do they overlook candidate quality and simply look at the party ID next to the name and say, I'm voting party, voting on the economy, and that's how I'm voting. So that race is going to tell me a lot about whether the Democrats have a chance to limit their losses in the House or even be competitive in holding it, or whether this could be a really big night for the Republicans.
We're expecting a close race in the 1st district. It's one we're paying close attention to. Any perspective on that, or any other districts that you have a particular eye on tonight?
Well, yeah, look, I'm into the 6th as well, Kathy Manning's district, simply because she should win re-election. But if Republican turnout is pretty intense and independent voters are moving in the Republicans' direction, you know, in a larger wave-like atmosphere, she could be in trouble.
So turnout, we were mentioning how, you know, turnout is going to be very important to see which way these races go, particularly in the Senate. Early voting, higher than what we saw in the 2018 midterms. What kind of impact do you think that higher turnout will have here?
All right, how important is it for you to know the first quarter score in a football game?
Right.
And I say this, I don't mean it. It tells you something, but it doesn't tell you a lot, you know. And so I would be very careful here, because with the early vote, there's a lot of people that are changing their own behavior on voting. We don't know. You have some people that are still very cautious with the pandemic, others that are not. So I just think we don't know voting habits the same way. Even whatever that we thought the habits were in 20, whatever we thought the habits were in 18, I just would caution anybody to try to read in too much into it, because I do think we're in the middle of a behavioral shift with Americans when it comes to convenience voting. So I'm very, like I said, look, first quarter scores tell you something. They tell you which team is red hot at the beginning of a game. but it doesn't always tell you who won the game.
We are prepared for some surprises tonight, as you are in any election night, but we have added a district since the census. 2 long-term North Carolina congressmen, Representatives G.K. Butterfield, David Price, also both retiring. What does that do to North Carolina's voice in Congress?
Well, throw in losing Richard Burr, right, in seniority. That's a lot of, David Price, Richard Burr. These are 2 guys who've been there a long time, one in the House Democrats, one in Senate Republican. You certainly want to have as much seniority as you can these days, but, there's so much turnover now in both the House and Senate. So, it's funny, it's a catch-22. There are not many people have the seniority, so when you have somebody that has it, it's not great to lose it. G.K. Butterfield was there a long time, had a lot of influence with the Congressional Black Caucus. Like I said, David Price, been in Congress so long, he's lost before and came back. I think if memory serves, he lost in the first wave of the modern era back in 1994. So he's certainly somebody that has plenty of experience. But when you lose all that, it can be, costly when it comes to negotiations on Capitol Hill.
NBC's Chuck Todd, you're such an informed voice on an election night. Thank you for sharing it with us tonight.
Thanks for saying that. Appreciate it.